Hello, everyone. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you, as always, for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football. Pete Nakos, Jamie Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lazley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there. Sign up today.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Time! 3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game! Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni! Float game for the win! Ayler's gone! Goodbye, touchdown, Indy! Woo! IU! America! They got a football team now!
Pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you. Another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you on this Friday, of course, from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. Make sure you stop by and visit them over there in Nashville. Or you can pick up some Hard Truth anywhere, most of the places where you live all around the country. But they're a great location there in Nashville. Great place to spend some time watching a game, just hanging out with the fam, whatever. Glad to have you along. A gigantic packed show today. Try to always make it that way, but Fridays always seem to load up on their own, and Indiana basketball doing their best to help us out. They pick up a couple of more commitments, as we'll be talking about, of course, as Todd Liry will join us, the shot father from myjumpshot.com. Zach Osterman, the Indy Stars IU beat writer, also on the dais, along with Alec Lazley from thehoosier.com. So we have you covered in everything that's going on right now. Of course, those commitments, we'll get to those guys as Indiana and Darian DeVries continues to add pieces to his roster to get that thing up and going as he gets closer and closer to having the guys that he wants. And I know that a lot of people are still they're waiting for I'm not sure what they're waiting for, this big 7'2" guy or something like that, but that's not that's just not this style of offense. Not to say that he's not going to go out and find some big 7-footer, but if it works within the constraints of what they're planning on doing offensively, yeah, I see it. But otherwise, maybe not. Now, one of the two guys that just came in, the guy with Drake, I guess, or yesterday's commitment, not the guy from Florida. I don't even have the names knocked out yet, but they list him as a guard, but he's 6'7". So, yeah, he's probably more of a 3. So, but that's what you're going to see a ton of. I say this over and over. It's going to be an offense that's getting up and down the floor. You're going to see a lot more shots. They're going to need some rebounding, and their pickup from Florida is a rebounding machine. So we'll talk about that, but a lot to talk about. Some sad news. USC commit Elijah Arenas. He's the son of former NBA player Gilbert Arenas, involved in a serious car crash. He's in an induced coma. Hopefully he'll come out of that and be okay. Indiana football lands another commit, their third commit of the spring for 2026, a defensive lineman, Rodney White. They land him over Penn State, Tennessee, South Carolina, and more as Kurt Signetti and crew and Brian Haynes continue doing the things they need to do to just add those little bits of spices into that great recipe. And Indiana fans are poised to have one of the greatest seasons in athletics history. And that's with just the thought of the basketball team being competitive. Now, I say that because the football team is more than competitive. They're bumping into an elite level. I mean, they were in an elite level last year. I don't expect them to be anything less than that this season. So that's a first. That's never happened. I mean, it happened last year, but before now, this has never been an option for IU fans. And now if they get the basketball program back to respectability and then beyond, well, not many schools have an elite level football program and a high level basketball program. It happens. Michigan has done it. There are others on occasion, but Indiana's not that big of a school either. So it's even more of even more of an accomplishment, but we'll talk more about that as well. The University of Kentucky's Board of Trustees today meeting and considering a proposal where all of UK's athletics would entirely shift to an LLC or a holding company called Champions Blue LLC. That is their effort to get ahead of all of the changes that have come and are still coming with the rev share house settlement impending. That seems weird. It seems like the entire athletics program is being taken out of the school. And I just really, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying it's not a smart idea. A lot of times it's smarter to run things like a business if they're going to run it like a business. But is this a way to get out of under the thumb of the school, out from under the auspices of the watching eyes of the school? A lot of questions that will go along with that. But I'm sure that this will not be something that they're alone on now that this has happened. We're going to see all kinds of things people doing differently as the athletics climate continues to morph and change. There's going to have to be hopefully some guardrails that come along to prevent certain things and keep them in line. The rev share is supposed to do that in a way, but not really. I mean, this just puts a cap on what the schools can pay. Well, who cares? Then where's the money the schools are getting? Now, obviously, they could pay a lot more if they wanted to. Indiana could pay more than $20 million to athletes if they wanted to because of the Big Ten money coming in. So this keeps everybody in that regard. But what is to say that you just got to raise the money, through your collective, which programs will continue to do, and there's no limit there. The NFL draft last night. Cam Ward from Miami takes the number 1 Tennessee Titans. Didn't they just draft that dude from Kentucky a couple years ago? But he went number 1, man. Number 2 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Hunter of Colorado, the multi-star athlete. Now, I know that there's been a lot of chatter with him and his camp saying that, hey, I'm planning on playing both ways. Well, you're in the NFL now, and most players don't tell NFL teams what to do. It's not like the NBA. They probably have a lot more. They have a lot more sway. NFL, not so much. NFL kind of still runs their show. And while he is a tremendous athlete and a deserving winner of the Heisman Trophy last season, one of the best football players out there, playing both ways and successfully playing both ways, I don't know that he was a tremendous. Is he an elite receiver? I think he was a pretty good defensive back. I don't know if he's elite. Is he elite in either of those? Because when you step up to the National Football League, you go there with your big boy pants on. And to be able to play on one side of the ball is tremendous. I'm not saying he can't do it. Because when you're that skilled and that athletic, yeah, you probably can. But again, most times in the NFL, they want you focusing. They want you being the best you can be on this. And if your focus is anywhere else, that you can't be the best that you could be here because you're subtracting some attention. I don't know how, though. We'll see. He went to Jacksonville. They sucked, so odds are he'll get to do whatever the hell he wants. But I'm sure, what's the old Clemson quarterback? Happy to see somebody else to throw the ball to. The Giants took Abdul Carter from Penn State, a defensive end. Penn State also, I know that they, number 5, Michigan had a player go, number 5. Aston Genty. You remember him from Boise State? He's a Raider. Didn't have to go too far down to Las Vegas. He's a Raider. I can see him fitting into their program. Number 7, the guy you never heard of, Armand Membu from Missouri. He's an offensive tackle. That's how valuable those guys are. He is the number 7 pick in the first round of an NFL draft, and most college football fans have no idea who he is. Let's see, I'm just trying to find some more of note. Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas goes to New Orleans. Another Michigan player. Michigan, 2 players taken in the top 10. The Bears take Colston Loveland, a Michigan tight end, which the Colts had wanted to take a tight end, and they get that deal done. As a third Michigan player taken in the top 13. That's a team Indiana beat last year, people. That's 3 NFL draft picks, first-round draft picks in the first 13. Then Indianapolis, at number 14, they pick up Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, which that is pretty much who they wanted. He's one of the most complete tight ends in the class. He's an alpha dog with a tenacious, competitive spirit as a blocker, kind of player that the entire running schemes are constructed around in the mold of someone like George Kittle. Warren operates in a singular sequence. You can immediately think he's the best player on the field because that's the kind of infectious energy he emanates. Coach got a good one there. He's a bit more limited than you'd like as a receiver. He's not someone who will stretch the field or test defenses down the vertical seam. That's what Gronkowski could do. But I'm sure they may have liked to have gotten the dude from Michigan. But, hey, they got the one that they had planned on taking, and so there you go. But how about that, Michigan, with 3 guys? Ohio State drops to number 19 before they get their first pick. Hey, we've got to take a little pause. Todd Liry on the program today, the Shot Factor. Shot Doctor. Up next, we've got plenty more. Back with it on the other side. Appreciate you being with us, no matter where and how you're listening. One of our great radio station affiliates like 97.7 ESPN, The Ref, always the right call in Evansville. Up in the region on the voice of the region, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM WJOB, and in Fort Wayne on Fort Wayne Sports Station, 1380 The Fan. Keep it locked right here throughout the day. And if you're following along on social media, you know the deal. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Hit that like button. please. Back with more from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios.
Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue, and you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemooreSells@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth Sour Mash Bourbons, Sweet Mash, and Hard Road Ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular Toasted Coconut Rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday. And that means 2 things. 1, your week is over, baby, and it is time for the weekend and a visit from the shot Dr. Todd Liry of MyJumpShot.com. Make sure you're going there. If you know a kid, have kids, have seen a kid. Maybe you saw one running down the street, made him want to do something nice for him. Great birthday present. Help them improve their fundamentals, but just as an athlete all the way around, their mental attitude. Todd Liry, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you this morning? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. We're getting her done. I was getting ready to play around with...
I forgot my earbuds, so I got to go with the normal mic today.
Into the studio.
How'd that sound?
That sounded pretty cool. You sounded tough.
Man, it's been a busy week for Darian DeVries and staff as Indiana basketball has added a lot of pieces to their roster. Two commitments in the last day.
I thought that with the portal closing, because didn't the portal close on Tuesday?
Well, it closes as far as putting your name in, but once you're in until school starts.
So they can keep signing. They can keep signing guys as long as they want. There's
yeah.
From here on out.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean we knew, or I mean, a lot of teams are in this position, but we knew they were going to be filling some pieces. And you know, right now, I think that we have to just trust the staff. I know last year we, as fans, got super excited in the offseason with some of the big name acquisitions. And I think this year there'll be less big names, but I think there'll probably be more production to come out of those names. So, you know, we just all have to kind of sit back. This is an interesting offseason in the fact that not only are we getting new players, we're not exactly sure what style Coach DeVries is going to have in Indiana. So there's just...
I think we're getting a pretty good idea of it. And the funny thing is, Fred, where did that stupid comment go? Fred was suggesting, is this going to be the hurrying Hoosiers? And I have had someone make that comment a couple of times to me.
I mean, you know, it's really hard to say. Like, that's not been the MO of Coach DeVries in some of the places he's been, but you know, when you put a bunch of shooters on the floor it just makes everything easier. It makes the game look better and more fluid, makes the offense look better. And boy, right now, it sure appears they're putting a bunch of pieces together that are different than what this team's been built like, for the past 15 years or so. And that they're going to have guys that can knock shots down pretty much all over the court.
They're definitely going to get. And yesterday, the kid that signed yesterday, Nick Dorn, listed as a guard, but he's 6'7", so he's not really. He's a 2-3, whatever you want to call him. And I think that's. You're going to see a lot of guys that can play the 2, the 3, or the 3 and the 4. He's going to have guys that mix in there. There's going to be a hell of a lot more shooting involved, and they pick up the guy from Florida yesterday also, but he's known as a rebounder, a defender. Sam Alexis, coming off a national champion Florida team, very high rebounding rate, so they're going to be putting the ball up in the air.
Yeah, they are. And the style appears to be one that I think we'd be excited about. I know last year I spent a lot of time over the summer complaining that I thought we had a team built that was going to play too slow. And that's not the case for this team. And you're right. Like, they've got a lot of interchangeable parts. Like, this team is very deep in that 2-3-4 position. And I know it's positionless basketball now, but in that 2-3-4 range and guys that can play there, this is a deep team, deep roster already. Now, it's not deep like in maybe some past years where you thought there was 5-star recruits in those positions, but I think we've all hopefully come to the conclusion that the stars don't really matter. Like, when the guys
How did that work? How did that work out?
Yeah, when they play well together, you can throw the stars out the window. And this team, and I think teams from Indiana's successful past, and hopefully moving forward, are teams that are built that are, the sum is greater at the whole. And these guys are going to play well together. I think Coach DeVries is going to build that locker room. I know I keep saying this repeatedly on the show every week, but I think the importance of the locker room being good guys is as important as anything. And I'm glad that that's a factor for Coach DeVries and how he's building his roster.
Yeah, and I think the difference here is he's going to have to make sure that these guys are also very sound and good defensively. But Sam Alexis, the kid that is going to come in from Florida, like I mentioned, didn't play a ton. He was a reserve for the national champions, but he was an active player, and his per 40 minutes numbers are pretty high. As a matter of fact, his per 40 minutes rebounding rate is off the chain at 14.5%. And the highest, Trace Jackson Davis as a senior, was 10. If that puts it some in perspective for you.
Yeah, but those per 40-minute numbers are silly. Like, a lot of times those don't make any sense, especially if you get a guy that comes in.
Hey, I'm trying to jazz it up. I'm trying to jazz it up here.
I like it. I'm just being a realist. In the summertime, in off season, we tend to get overly excited and put numbers on guys as to what you can expect out of them. And hey, it's all going to matter with the fit. It's hard to say what your per 40-minute numbers are going to be. We don't know how fast this team's going to play. He may average more than that. They may fly up and down the court. They also may slow it down quite a bit. So, the per 40-minute numbers are just fun for us to talk about. But, yeah, adding pieces that you've got to have those rebounders. I said that on your show last week. Somebody's going to have to rebound the ball. And I do think that Tucker DeVries and Trent Sicily, those guys will be big rebounding factors. Those guys rebound above their height and abilities a lot of times, and because of their hustle and how hard they play. And that's what Indiana fans, and especially myself, have been hoping to see, and looking at guys that just play their tails off and play hard, and the production will happen. He's got talented enough players. The production is there. They just got to get to playing hard and playing well together, and this will be a fun team to watch.
And, I'm sure fans are thinking, well, they're not bringing any names, quote unquote names in, not any, and yada, yada. And I'm like, how many names did Kirk Cignetti bring in? And how did that work out? I know this is a different sport, but the point is he brought in the guys that he wanted, that he thought fit into the system and what he was trying to do. And I'm pretty certain that this is exactly what Darian DeVries is doing. He knows what he wants to do, how he wants to run his offense, how he wants the defense to play. And he knows that the type of players that he wants to try to fit into that. And that's what he's going after.
Yeah, I mean, watching the NFL draft last night, you kind of get, there's a sense to the same, I know it's a different sport, and I know it's the pros versus college, but I mean, it's kind of dealing with the same thing. I mean, do you draft the best player available, or do you take a guy that fits the position you need to fill the most? And, I think last year, look, Omar Ballo was an outstanding player, big name, he's going to make your team better. And it was one of those circumstances. I think Indiana was in a position last year that they were trying to sign the most talent possible and then try to make it work and fit. And I think Kansas is another example of doing the same thing. And those two examples did not work out. And they spent a lot of money and they tried to put a bunch of talent together. I know Omar Ballo and AJ Storr last year were probably the two biggest names in the whole portal. Omar's season was decent and fine, not super productive. They didn't make the NCAA tournament, so not successful. And AJ Storr, they made the NCAA tournament, but he was almost a non-factor for that Kansas team. And so the big name doesn't mean a whole lot. I like the way that they're building the roster and putting the pieces together. I said it when they hired Coach DeVries and that we knew they were going to have to build a roster. I hope he signs a bunch of dudes we've never heard of, because that means they've done their research and they found the pieces that are going to fit. And I'm not going to say we've never heard of most of these guys, but I think the pieces are the ones that Coach DeVries wants to add, and that is exciting for me.
And I agree 1,000%. Rick says, I think Alexis is a big pickup. He has the experience of what it takes to be a champion, coming off of defending champion Florida's team. But not only that, I talk about this Florida team a lot, and I said, how many of those guys had you ever heard of before the season? Yep. I guarantee you the average fan had not heard of any of those guys, right. And they went out and won a national championship. And they did it by playing the style of play they needed to play together and doing the things they needed to do. That is what I see is more of a value that he brings. Although being on a championship team always helps. You go through a lot of different battles, but he knows what it's like to be on a team that has been comprised of guys that were not all 5 stars. We're not all NBA first round projected draft picks and still succeed and win.
Yeah, and the guys that are just like exactly what you said, the guys that were on that Florida team, when some of them were freshmen, they were not the lead guy on their team. They were not the best player on their team. They weren't the brand marquee name like they became this year running through the tournament. And so having a guy that's been through the battle, no matter how much he played or did not play, having that experience and be able to bring that experience and talk about it with other guys and, let everybody know how much fun it is to get to go play in the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 and the Final Four. What all is entailed with that. There's nobody on Indiana's roster last year that could go through and tell them what it's like to play in the Final Four. And yeah, it does add a little motivation. And when you're able to talk about how cool these things were and the experiences, every year, no matter what sport it is, when it gets to the playoff time, you hear announcers and analysts start talking about how much playoff experience, these teams have. And whether, that kid played a ton or didn't, he went through the experience, which can only help when you're coming into this locker room to be able to spread that around to the other guys and let everybody know how cool it was. So just that experience alone is a big value bringing that in.
Yeah, for certain. And I think that we're starting to get a pretty good understanding of what this team is going to look like. Now, what are your thoughts on with what he has put together so far? He's looking at in a bigger guy. They do have the Reed guy that's 6'10", which, I think unless you find a 7-footer that is a mobile 7-footer, this is not going to be a team. I said this yesterday or the day before. You're not going to see an Umar Ballo on this team.
Right.
There's not going to be somebody who is tied to the basket that can't move. So, I mean, unless there's a Danny Wolf out there, which, boy, wouldn't everybody love to have 2 or 3 of those in their pocket? But that's the only like big I would kind of think that they would want to go after.
Well, and I think that they're going to look at a team where, they've got guys that play bigger than what they are. And Trent Sisley at 6'7" or 8, like he rebounds at a bigger guy than that. You look at Danny Wolf, you use him as an example, and he's a great example because he's not a high-flying rebounder. Now he's 7 feet tall, kind of slow, but he's good with the ball, and he's fundamentally sound, and he plays hard, and he's good at positioning. And when you get a 6'8" guy that plays bigger than what he is. I think Tucker DeVries plays bigger than what he is. I mean, he's a stat stuffer. He picks up rebounds and assists. I think Trent Sisley will do the same thing. I think a lot of these other guys they bring in, the kid that's from DePaul that had played for DeVries at Drake before. I mean, he rebounds for better than someone his size. And so, I think you're right. I don't think they're even looking for someone to plug the middle. I think they're looking for guys that can produce bigger than what they are. And if a guy's 6'10", that's awesome. You can compete with anybody at that size. But I think a lot of the 6'6" to 6'9" guys that will be on this roster will play bigger than what the average 6'6" or 7 guy plays. And I know DeVries and Sicily both fall into that category. They're gonna rebound bigger than, if they're playing 2 or 3 guard. They're going to rebound well for that position. And I just like the structure of this roster. I didn't like it last year. I know I'm not just, jumping on the new bandwagon because I said it last summer. I did not like the way that the roster was constructed. I didn't like how slow they were going to have to be forced to play. And I really do like this construction of this roster. I think they've got a bunch of guys that'll spread the floor out and make it easier on everybody to go get their own shot and be able to produce and put numbers on the board. And that's what we're all looking forward to.
Absolutely. And in talking about Sam Alexis, the kid from Florida transfer, he is exactly what you're talking about. He's a guy that plays bigger than he is. He's got that higher than average rebounding rate. He's a shot blocker. So he's going to be someone that can help out. He's going to be a help side defender. He's not your 5, but he's going to be a 4 that can come in and cause problems. But they're also looking at a guy like Texas Tech center Federico. He's a big old 6'11" guy that played in all 32 games, 6 starts for the Red Raiders. He averaged 5 points, 4 rebounds, and only 7 blocks a game, but he shot 75%. But he's a shot blocker. He's an offensive rebounder. That's probably the style of guy that I know they'd like to have and that they're talking to.
Yeah, and you definitely need those types of guys. One, because you need the fouls, you need the extra fouls, you need guys that can come in and get those rebounds and plug that. The Federico guy, I enjoyed watching him play. I thought he was productive in the time that he was there. I think he's a guy that will play in the NBA and be one of those, rebounding big 4-5 guys in the NBA. And so I think he's that type of player. And to add someone like that, definitely, I think I said it a week ago on your show, they were going to need to start plugging in rebounders and some bigger guys that can defend bigger guys. And, I think the offensive ends, they're going to have 3 shooters on the floor almost all the time. And that's just a luxury we've not been able to say about Indiana in the past couple of years. Many years, actually. And so that's what's exciting to me. I think they're plugging in the right pieces. He's looking for the right pieces. He's not just adding the best player available. And I really am excited to see the structure and how this thing plays out at the end. I think the practices will be fun. I used to love going to watch IU practices because of how hard they competed and played and all that. And I'm not picking on anybody or trying to prove any point, but over the last several years, not just the last 4 or 5 years, the last several years, the practices just haven't been that way. And I think we're getting ready to get back to that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's going to be very equally matched. You're going to have guys that are just out there fighting each other for time, for minutes, because there are going to be so many that could play it. There are going to be multiple guys that could play the 2, the 3, or the 4, I think.
Yeah, there are.
And that is a great luxury. It allows you to force some teams or allows you to impose your will on some teams because forcing them to match up to you. My question is, though, what happens when they play a team, and I'll use Purdue as an example, who they're pretty set on how they run their offense. They always got a big, usually, that you're going to have to contend with. If you have a setup like Indiana is probably going to have, how do you combat that traditional big?
Well, and we talk about this every year when we're like game planning, when it's the week of the IU Purdue game, and we're talking about it. And we know how Purdue, like it's obvious how Purdue, practices and works to defend other teams. And when they do that, they double team a lot in the post, almost exclusively. They will double team. Sometimes it's just on the dribble. Sometimes it's on the catch, but they scheme for that. And that's what I think we're going to see a lot more of out of Indiana. They're going to scheme for things. There'll be times when they have to double team the post. You got to go get the ball out of Trey Kaufman-Wren's hands. You got to go get the ball out of Braden Smith's hands, and they'll double team and get that ball out of the hands of the guys they don't want to have it. And, I don't think we're going to be in that situation where you've got an Omar Ballo or a Malik Renew or a Trace Jackson Davis where you say, hey, one-on-one, you go guard Trey Kaufman-Wren and you're going to stop him by yourself. We're not going to come help off of everybody else. And I think we're going to see a different philosophy from Indiana, and they'll scheme to guard guys differently as a team versus the one-on-one matchups I think Indiana's become accustomed to playing defensively for the last 4 seasons.
Well, and how I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and hit a break because we've got to do that because there's plenty more to talk about. When we come back, I'm going to ask you, how much of a departure is this going to be next season for Indiana fans? A positive one, I think, something that they have not seen in a decade. But we'll talk about that and all much more as we're coming to you from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. And remember, for those of you out looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area especially, our good friend Cheryl Sizemore, one of our great supporters, she's she was supposed to be out working on a Habitat for Humanity home today. It's an all-women's thing that they're doing. Congratulations to them up in Martinsville. I think they got rained out today, but they'll be back. But that's the kind of person she is, in addition to being the greatest realtor around. Reach out to Cheryl. Cheryl Sizemore sells at gmail.com. Todd Liry's with us. We're back with more right after these messages.
Know a team or group needing a fundraiser? Boost Fundraising raises more money faster and offers the most unique and user-friendly online fundraiser in the nation. Your team receives personalized fundraising pages for each team member. Free team-branded promo gifts shipped to each donor. Boost Fundraising does it all. Sports teams, marching bands, charity causes, and community groups. Go to boostfundraising.com and be sure to enter the promo code COYLE, that's COYLE, to receive a discounted fundraiser. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth Sour Mash Bourbons, Sweet Mash, and Hard Road Ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular Toasted Coconut Rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday, joined by the shot father, Todd Liry from myjumpshot.com. Make sure you go there if you have kids no kids, doesn't matter. It could be you looking to improve your basketball fundamentals or just athletics overall. Man, next season is going to be almost as big a departure from what IU fans have seen as what last season was for football. I'm not going to put it on that same category because of how far IU football went, but it's going to be. It may not be a 180, but it's going to be a 145 or something. It's going to be a drastic change.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a change in style, in everything you would expect when you get a new coach in, and with the way things are now with the portal, basically a new roster, and that is exciting. Like I am excited to be able to see these guys come in and see them develop. That's the one thing, or not the one thing. There's been several things, but that is one thing that over the years I think has frustrated me, in that I've not seen the guys improve individually. I've not seen the team camaraderie build and guys play well together. I think last year they started to a little bit. So I don't want to say it's unfair for me to say that, because as a fan,
not really. That's been pretty much the case.
It has, but I do think that we will be able to say, and I think we'll be able to say it not just this year, but in years to come, that Indiana teams will get better as the season goes on. You'll see a big difference between these teams in November that what you see in February and March. And if you go back and study Coach DeVries and look at his teams over the years, they have definitely gotten better and been a team to deal with once the postseason comes along, and they play well together. And that is something that I am excited to see. This offseason for me is more exciting than the past several, because I do think we have that to look forward to, and I'm excited about that.
And there have been just massive changes. Everything has changed. Basically, everybody is gone. And that includes some people that I didn't really expect to be gone, like Jordan Hulls and maybe Calvert. We haven't heard for sure, but it doesn't look like right now, at least not on staff, that's not good to take place. And normally I would say, but is it really just? And I know you're friends with Calvert, and Jordan. I know Jordan as well. But is it a good thing that they're just getting rid of everything, and even when you don't have anything to do with the negative part, there's still everything has got to go to just cleanse the program, because it kind of has needed cleansing for a while.
Yeah, that part of it I definitely agree with, and I even said it last year. Like it's going to be unfortunate because of some collateral damage, but I think everything from the Bob Knight era and all of that, as successful as it was and as awesome and what it built for the institution, putting it in blue blood status. But I do think it's a good thing that they're basically have cleaned house and started over. And I'll say this, I don't necessarily, whether it happens this year or not, it doesn't look like it, like you said, but I don't think you'd be opposed to bringing a Jordan Hulls back in a year from now. And if it does, it may still happen this year. I'm not sure, but I don't think that he's necessarily opposed to having Indiana, former Indiana guys around. I think they need to come in and just build their own thing, though. I don't disagree with that. And I like, I don't, the one part of it that I will say, and where a Jordan Hulls, I think, brings huge value, and Calvert and their names, is the recruiting in the state of Indiana. And to be able to go, Coach DeVries can get in front of any high school coach right now. But Jordan Hulls probably knows a couple dozen coaches already. And if not, right, they definitely know him. And
because he probably beat their ass when he was in high school.
100%. And right now you've got guys coaching in high schools across the state that their dads or grandpas or uncles or whatever probably coached in those same communities. They're familiar with the names, but I'm also not saying it's mandatory.
People forget his grandfather was on Bob Knight's first staff in Bloomington.
Yeah. And so, that trickles down, and I think that they'll. I think including the Adams
family.
I was going to say that, and I realized I better not. But you are basically adding the family. I mean, his dad's still a huge tie to the Indiana Elite program, and that just having those ties is big. And so I don't think it's having someone on the staff right away. As a former player, I'm going to tell you, I don't think it's as huge a deal. I think that they will make the connections. We've already seen Coach DeVries at high school, watching Trent Sicily play up at HSE. He was on the phone the whole time. He's talking to coaches all over the place. He's not going to have any trouble making those connections and getting in the door. And as long as he's doing that, look, I think we would all agree he's going to put the work in. He's proving right now he's going to put the work in, just like Coach Signetti. So, yeah, that comparison is allowed to be made like that. And we hope it just comes out, fractionally as good as that one did for Signetti.
Yeah, no, and you are exactly right. He's bringing in the guys that he is already familiar with, that he has confidence in, that can do the job that he needs done. That doesn't necessarily you don't need a tie to IU to especially in today's age.
Right.
It's almost pointless, as a matter of fact, because your roster is going to see so much turnover year in and year out, and 80% of those guys are probably going to have zero connection to the state of Indiana because of the transitory nature now of it, which, good or bad.
And, Brian Walsh was a guy who put in an enormous amount of time.
He worked his butt off.
Made huge connections across the state from a high school level and all that. And he wasn't an Indiana guy. He's from Ohio and played in Ohio. And so it doesn't have to be an Indiana guy. It's got to be a guy that's willing to work hard. And that, to me, is what we have. And he said it from day one. In that opening press conference with Coach DeVries, you heard him say he has to act in some ways as a CEO. He's got to empower guys underneath him to go work hard and do their jobs and bring in guys. And I think that we're seeing him do that. And that's a great thing. And I wasn't disappointed when they hired an IU guy and Mike Woodson, 4 years ago. I also am not disappointed that they don't have an IU guy on staff right now. I think that it's in good hands, and I trust the work hard thing. To me, solves it all. And when you work hard, good things happen in basketball, and this guy works hard, and that will trickle down. He won't allow it to not trickle down. And as long as we see these guys practice hard, play hard, good things will happen.
He's not here to collect a check.
Yeah, he's not. This is not.
You can tell that.
This is not a short-term deal. This is not a retirement gig. This is not I'm getting paid back for everything I did for the school. This is not any of that. And I'm not saying that that's what it was in the past. But this is a destination job. Coach DeVries, I think if you asked him right now, hopes he retires when he is 70 years old as the Indiana Hoosiers all-time winningest coach. And he's got a lot of years to put in for that. And I think we're thankful for that.
Coach Signetti will have that honor, more than likely. And the reason I bring him up is because I look at him, and 2 years ago, I think he was making about $600,000 a year. That would be great for you and me, but if you know what he's making now,
in that world, yeah,
in that world,
that's
more than 10 times that. He's making $10 million a year, but he's coaching the same way. Nothing has changed. And he is just as methodical, and I'm bringing that up because it's the same with Darian DeVries. It doesn't matter where you go. You are who you are if that's who you are. If you're driven to win, you know what it takes to win, and you know the effort that it takes to put in to get that accomplished. He's one of those guys. I agree with you.
Yeah, and when you have someone that's known Coach Signetti for a long time or worked around him, when they describe him, and it's been multiple people, what they talk about is how hard he works. And I've heard some of the exact same comments about Coach DeVries, and he's a basketball guy, and that's what we've wanted. Just because you've been around it your whole life, doesn't make you necessarily a basketball guy. When you commit your life to it and it's what you eat, drink, and sleep every day, and that's what Coach DeVries is. That rubs off on people, and we're not going to have to worry about not working hard and letting guys not be accountable for their actions and how they work and play. And I couldn't be more excited about that.
I'm a little surprised that by now we have not heard a third assistant named. And I don't know if that's just because they're going through the process, if that person is actively working. Drew Adams doesn't look like he's going to be a quote assistant. His role, I don't know what his role is officially going to be, since he hasn't been announced as that per se. I don't know if he's going to be like a GM type or whatever, but there's still that open, at least one open spot for them to fill.
Yeah, and I don't think, unless we're inside his head and we're in that inner circle, I don't think we're going to know exactly what the plan is for that. If they've got 3 or 4 guys in mind, if they have no one in mind, if they're leaving it open to see like what happens over the summer. Like I said, having a connection to, the state of Indiana and recruiting and all that's awesome. Adams brings you that, and that's great. But it doesn't have to be Indiana as well. Like maybe there's an AAU guy out there or maybe there's a connection to, we had that Montverde kind of cycle coming through Indiana.
Maybe that changes to Spire Academy, which is where Kevin Boyle went to.
Exactly. And it may change to somewhere else. I mean, Coach DeVries might have another angle and another contact out there. And that's the stuff that's the inner stuff we probably won't find out or know. But I trust the process. I trust that they're going to work hard. And I know I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm just telling you, like, that solves a lot of it for me. When you've got a guy that I know is going to work hard, I'll support it no matter what. And even if they're not successful in year one, I'll support it if I know they're working hard. And I just can't say it's been the case that way. Like, there's a lot of games last year I felt like I worked harder than some of the guys. You worked harder recruiting last year without recruiting. Just by having a conversation or a comment, it's there's no point in getting in all that. It's that's water under the bridge, man. Water under the bridge. I let myself get sucked into that. What's up next for you, brother? A weekend is here. I don't know how the weather's going to be, a little iffy, but yeah, it's going to be warm. I'll take that part of it. Hopefully get some golf in.
Not really. It's going to be 63 tomorrow, dude.
63. That's golfable.
Were you back in Florida again?
Nope. I'm right here.
I'm 82 on Monday.
I'm right here in the pouring rain today because it is coming down already.
Where will you be playing? Are you playing this weekend?
Probably at the point.
Eagle Point.
Yep.
Oh, well, are you playing with your normal morning guys?
Yep.
All right.
They've already, once it got above 40, they started playing. I just don't start till it's like 60.
And these guys get after it. Enjoy it, brother. The Shot Father, Todd Liry, joining us as he does each and every Friday. Thank you, my friend.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely. We've got more coming up from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios, back with all of that and more.
If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the hard truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. When it comes to apparel and promotions, Freethink has you covered, literally, whether it's 24 or 200 shirts for sports leagues, businesses, or groups. Freethink Apparel and Promotions can also create your very own merchandising store. Freethink Apparel and Promotions did it for Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and they can do it for you. Whether it's screen printing, embroidery, digital printing, promotional products, vehicle wraps, or anything else under the promotional line. See what Freethink Apparel and Promotions can do for you at freethinkapparel.com. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Jim Coyle with you as always, and joined by Zach Osterman, Indy Stars IU beat writer. And boy, a lot going on the beat this week, Zach, as Indiana basketball, Indiana football, both reaping harvest out of the transfer portal. Of course, more eyes on the basketball program as they are looking to fill an entire new roster with a new coach, and doing quite well with that in the last couple of days, landing another, what is listed as a guard, but he's a 6'7" guy. I just finished talking with Todd Liry, and but you're going to see a lot of positionless basketball, a lot of guys that can play the 2, the 3, and the 4, or the 4 at various times. I think it's going to be a vast departure from what IU fans saw last season. Hell, of what they've seen for nearly a decade. Still a few more pieces to fill in on that. Probably a rim protector for someone like Frederico, or whomever they can get. But we're starting to get a pretty good indication of where this roster is headed.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, they've got, if you don't factor in Luke Goody, there's 3 scholarships open. If you do, there's 2. And there's no guarantee, obviously. I mean, Darian DeVries might carry all 13. Some coaches do, some coaches don't. A lot of coaches, I think that tends to be more just kind of like what's available in the moment. I think if you're going to run a motion-based offense, which is what DeVries has talked about as his kind of staple, then it's kind of it's sort of like a what's old is new again thing. We call it positionless basketball. Well, you probably could have called it that when, Bob Knight was running a lot of motion principles in the 70s and 80s, and there were other coaches too. I'm not saying Bob Knight invented all of this. My point is, the whole point of a motion offense is the ball just keeps moving. West Virginia was in something like the 6th percentile for post-ups last season. So the idea, and there's nothing wrong with a post-based offense. I mean, Indiana had plenty of success with it with Trace Jackson Davis. But, the idea of an offense that basically once it gets set in the half court, once it's exhausted all of its potential transition options, comes down, posts up a big man, that big man gets the ball, and then the offense starts operating off of that post-up all the way around. That's just a different kind of offense. A motion offense, the ball just keeps moving. And the point is, you've got to have a lot of guys that can be comfortable getting the ball in a lot of different spots on the floor, because in a motion offense, that's what's bound to happen. That is what is going to happen. You aren't going to have guys that are only going to get the ball here. They're only going to see the ball on the wings or coming off of screens, or they're only going to see it when they're handling it or going through ball screens. And you can run, motion concepts can be fit to ball screen offense. They can be, fit to what we used to call dribble drive. I don't think we really call it that anymore. But what you need is a lot of people, a lot of players that are capable of moving the ball and moving with the ball and moving without the ball, and being comfortable if suddenly they find the ball in an area on the floor you wouldn't normally expect maybe a 3 to get the ball, for example, but he's got a shot, they just take it because they don't look at it and say, well, that's not my shot because I play this position over here. That's a lot of this makes sense based on the way that DeVries has explained sort of his concepts and his approach to his offensive philosophy. I think there are still some questions I have about this roster, especially if Goody comes back. It is, now guaranteed to be more than half comprised of players that will leave after next year because they're out of eligibility, and that's before we consider any transfers, any potential NBA departures, anything like that. It is an offense that I think is still really missing a rim presence. It may be that the staff sees Reed Bailey as that. I'm not sure, looking at his film and his numbers, that I see him that way. But, listen, I'm not a basketball coach, so I'm not going to sit here and say that I know that, so much better than people that spend all their waking hours thinking about it. But you can see there are a lot of things about the way this roster has been built so far that make sense for next year. And even some, when you look at guys like Nick Dorn or Jason Drake or Josiah Miles, that makes sense for, the year after that as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you're, but with the, I was thinking about this with the roster, when you see all these guys are coming in that, well, they've got 1 year of eligibility. And, but at the end of the day, I started to think, you know what? They're all on 1 year contracts in essence, and you're going to have to re-recruit every single one of them regardless, even if they have eligibility left. Although it's easier to probably recruit a kid that's already in your camp than to go out and find someone else. I understand that. And I guess that right now they're just so intent maybe on trying to get the pieces they need for this first. You only get one chance to make a first impression. I don't know if that's the overweighing factor on how it's being put together, or this is what we're able to get done at the moment. Either way, I think obviously the most important thing is, does he get the pieces he needs to be successful and to be competitive in a league that's going to be competitive next season, and to do it in a way that it definitely has not been done at Indiana in quite some time, but it's also not a typical Big Ten style of basketball.
No, I mean, listen, I think for a long time, not for a long time, I think we always sort of ask this question of like, do you try to win early? Is that cutting corners? I think to your point, rosters are so transient anymore that it's hard to sort of point to any given season and say that's the one where you should be good. I mean, if anything, there's probably an extent to which a coach would say, my remit is to be good immediately because that's what's expected, because that's the climate that's out there. Kentucky did it. Michigan did it. I mean, we can go up and down the list of teams. There were a number of teams. Ole Miss, I think, kind of flattened that curve pretty quickly when Chris Beard got there. Obviously, St. John's only needed 2 years under Rick Pitino. In this era, it's expected that you win at a pretty high level and you win pretty quickly. Now, that may lead you to make some decisions about your roster that, ultimately you're going to have to go back and, I'm getting a new front door today and they're banging around out here in the background. That may lead you to make some decisions that you eventually have to kind of reconcile with later on, like taking all of these players, that are older. But if you're Indiana, I think you also always have the assurance of the resources necessary to go rebuild. And, you think about, like Michigan's probably a decent example. That Michigan team, Vlad Golden's going to be gone. I think Danny Wolf declared for the draft. I think Will Cheddar's going to be gone. I know Namari Burnett announced he's coming back. They've had 1 or 2 defections in the portal. I think Trey Donaldson went in the portal. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think, we used to quantify momentum in part based on a program's roster construction. And we used to say, like, part of your momentum is the momentum of your program is whether you're recruiting, retaining, and developing your roster well. And I just don't know that we can see it quite that way anymore, because, Michigan is, I think, a good example too on the front side of this, not just the back side. They're having, they've put together one of the best portal classes in the country. Well, one of the things that's enabled them to do that is that in Dusty May's first year, they won 27 games. They won the Big Ten tournament. They nearly won the Big Ten, if not for kind of a late season dip. They went to the Sweet 16. So in the portal, Michigan's got tons of agency. My understanding is they've got a really healthy, sort of resource pool to draw from in terms of what they're able to offer kids in compensation. And so you're not bothered by losing all these players. I mean, like, again, Michigan's going to have lost, something like, if I'm looking at their usage rates right now in KenPom, Michigan's going to have lost something like 4 of its top 6 players from last season. And I think 3 of its 5 starters, most regular starters. But Michigan, if we 10 years ago, if a team endured that, whether it was via the draft or transfers or whatever, we'd say, boy, this is a real setback. This is
they'd be over. Their season would be over before it began.
Like, this is going to take a real good coaching job to kind of get it back together. Now we look at it and we say, yes, but the momentum remains because they've had success, because the coach is well respected, and because under this new sort of approach to roster building, roster construction, roster maintenance, you're able to just reload again. And there are going to be years for any of these coaches where it doesn't quite work. Sure. And that may be the case for Indiana next year. But I think that old way of thinking about a program's momentum being tied directly to its roster construction and projection just doesn't quite fit the modern game and the modern sort of structure of how you put a roster together.
And Indiana has gone about this. Darian DeVries and his staff, they've been very quiet and under the radar as much as any team has, and as much as you can be at Indiana. But they have done a pretty damn good job of doing most of these things under the radar.
No, they have. And I mean, listen, the portal moves fast. I think anymore, it's also kind of down to the player and his representation, how much they want to play out in public in terms of recruitments. But I think it's also just kind of one of those things where there are so many of these players moving on, looking for something new. Like, if you tried to sort of be really public about every visit you took, every trip you took, every call, like, I mean, the system would just completely overload. We wouldn't make it, I think, is what I'm trying to say, to the end of May without everyone's head exploding. So I just think that I think there's an extent to which this is probably just the way it's going to work now, when there are so many players in the portal at any given time, and they're all taking visits and they're all moving around. This stuff's just going to happen faster. And if it happens faster, it's going to happen quieter because there's just going to be less time for information to get out. Now, I do think this staff has been able to move, in relative secrecy. I think this staff is also, and this is, not something a reporter loves, but I think this staff has also done a good job of just kind of keeping its business to itself and not sort of telegraphing, well, these are the guys we're going to go for, and we're going to get him, and we're going to get him, and we got a connection means we're going to get him, whatever. There's been just as much speculation about like players that aren't even in the portal that I think people just thought Indiana might have a line on because of an assistant coach or something like that. There's been as much of that as there's been, hard information that turned out to be true. And I think that's the staff's preference and its ability to work quietly. But I also think there's just an extent to which in the modern game here, in the modern construction of the transfer portal, this is all going to move so fast that it's just going to happen a little more quietly than what we're used to.
Yeah, Terhune Tiger asking, will they fit together? Can they defend? And everybody is only talking about shooting. Well, first of all, I think the reason for so much talk about shooting is because you haven't seen it in a decade at Indiana. So that's why the talk about that and how that can change what you're doing offensively. Yeah, of course they're going to have to play defense. I mean, Sam Alexis is someone who is probably going to be looked at as much for defense as he is offense.
Can I share an image here? Is that possible?
What's that?
Is it possible for me to share an image here?
Yeah, sure.
How do I do that?
Hope.
I think
go down to where it says present.
I think I gotta download it onto my computer. This is a meme that I've made because I'm just that creative.
You made a meme?
I made it for a buddy who was complaining about the defense. If anybody has if anybody has, let's see if this works. Can you bring this
There
up?
you go.
I made
That's
this.
what the pack line is for.
I made this for a buddy. I mean, listen, I know the famous Mad Men scene. I know the pack line is a bit of a dirty term after Archie Miller's tenure at Indiana. I would point out defense was, and I think Tony Adranya's talked about this too on Twitter and things. Defense was never really Archie Miller's problem. Like if you go back and look at Archie's teams historically, I mean his teams finished 43rd, 22nd, 32nd, and 65th in overall adjusted defensive efficiency. Like those are good numbers. And that year that they finished 65th, by the way, they were actually demonstrably better relative to the competition in Big Ten play. They were fourth in Big Ten games alone in adjusted defensive efficiency. And I would argue that a lot of those defensive numbers would have been better if they were not constantly under such significant stress from Indiana's offense. So basically what I'm trying to say is if Indiana had not been so frustratingly inconsistent scoring the ball, it probably would have been better defensively as well, because it would not have felt quite so stressed around basically having to win games with defense because it couldn't score. I don't think Darian DeVries' team, at least next year, is going to have a ton of trouble shooting and scoring. Now you kind of go to the other end of the floor, which is actually sort of where maybe he's had historically a little bit more success. Obviously, West Virginia was very, very good defensively last season, had to be because Tucker DeVries was out. The pack line is, I mean, it works. Like Brad Stevens ran the pack line. Tony Bennett ran the pack line. If it's
successfully to a national championship.
And I would argue that even under Archie Miller, the pack line worked, at least at a basic level. The team as constructed just wasn't good enough to take enough stress off that defense to make more of it in other areas. But Archie Miller had two defenses or three top 50 defenses and two top 35 defenses. Those are good numbers. And again, even you want to go some years. I mean, there were years where Indiana was one of the best teams in the Big Ten defensively, even just in Big Ten games alone, when obviously the level of competition is higher. My point is the pack line can work. I do think this team, for my money, could still really use more rim presence. And I know Alexis gives you some of that. It's also kind of been widely acknowledged that, and this is something that's just going to happen, just like it happens in prep recruiting, it happens in portal recruiting too. It's kind of widely sort of agreed upon that this is just not a great, like sort of, if you want to call it like a portal class at the 5. There aren't a ton of really sort of compelling, to use the old positional term, centers that have gone through this portal class. A lot of the ones that were interesting have been snapped up. So, it sometimes you just have to figure out how to cut your cloth according to what you feel is available to you. And I'm, for example, when I look at his film and his numbers, I'm a little bit skeptical of the idea that Reed Bailey can play too much of the 5. But the pack line is a defense that's kind of built around the whole mitigating the weaknesses of the individuals. So, maybe as time goes on, it'll be proven that some of these players fit that a little bit better.
The sum is greater than the parts.
Yes, and that is one of the basic theories behind the pack line, is the idea that you're not extending the defense out too much and asking any one player to just be like an elite sort of ball stopper. It's that the whole system compensates. It can accentuate the strengths of really good defenders, but it compensates for the weaknesses of ones that aren't as good. But when I bring that up just to like, the reason I sent that meme to my buddy was just to sort of make the point, like the pack line isn't, I know it's a dirty word around here. Somebody said like it's a, we're banned from saying pack line or hump. The pack line is not it is a defense that works if coached correctly. It is a defense that I would argue worked for Archie Miller. Archie's problem was his teams just could not shoot or score the ball with any consistency. And so you wound up looking at those defenses, I think, at times, and feeling like you saw weakness. But I think part of the reason you saw weakness was because when Indiana did play well defensively, Indiana made nothing of it at the other end of the floor. I mean, I can remember back to games that Indiana lost to Purdue 48-46 or Ohio State 55-52. Obviously, I'm looking at them right now. Games that Indiana should have won and played well in defensively against good teams and just could not score the ball to save its life. If this team can shoot and score at the level that we think it can, the pack line probably works better at the other end of the floor because you're not placing so much stress on your defense that you just can't possibly afford to not get a few stops.
This weekend, a huge weekend outside of what's all going on that we've been talking about, because Zach is also a little 500 coach. Who's your team again? I always forget.
Phi Kappa Psi.
Man, what are the odds going in? Where do you guys feel? How do you feel?
We'll be in and around.
I like that, in and around. I love that.
We've got 3 back from last year. 1 rookie who's young but promising. There's some teams that are probably a little bit more experienced than us in terms of overall races and things like that. But listen, I mean, I've come into races the presumptive favorite and lost. I've come into races as a coach, with kind of nobody talking about us and done really well, been on the last lap, been in the mix, been in the field sprint or in a position to win late. The reality is every race is a little different. There's 1,000 things that can go wrong that can derail your day, that are completely outside your control. And you just kind of, the race is no different than any other sport. It's you just take it a lap at a time. You try to solve the problems in front of you. I always say we'll need a little luck to have a good race day, but you always
got to have luck to win anything. Yeah.
There's no.
The weather's going to be perfect. It looks like it's going to be
the first thing we got to hope is that we can get the women's race in today, because it's not ideal. The contingency plan is to run both races tomorrow. I'm checking the weather again. It does look like, actually, I think the highest percentage chance of rain after the 3:00 hour, when the thunderstorms seem to start breaking up, is only 40%. They'll run in rain. What we need is for the rain to move off early. The women's race goes off usually around 4:30, 4:40. They'll have to dry the track off. They have those big vacuums or those big blowers that they use at IndyCar.
NASCAR, that's like NASCAR, baby.
Yeah, they got to drive that stuff into the infield so it drains off. But as long as they can run in rain, as long as it doesn't storm tonight, they'll get the women's race in tonight. You just want to be able to prep the track fully, because each race tears it up pretty good. Running both in one day is really difficult, but that is the contingency plan if they can't get the women's race in today. So hopefully, hopefully the storms stay away. Hopefully they break up and let's go racing.
Yeah, it's dancing all around us, but it is that time of year. It's the month of May, almost. Indy 500. We've got the little 500 should become the official kickstart for the Indianapolis 500.
I'm fine with that.
I think that would be
for some of it probably is.
It's perfect timing. Seriously, although they did have practice this week twice, yesterday, the day before. What a great kickoff that would be. Well, brother, I wish you and your team the best of luck. Hope you pull in a win. I know it's tough, but enjoy it and appreciate you as always.
Absolutely, Jim. Thanks for having me as always.
Thank you, sir. Zach Osterman, the Indy Stars IU beat writer. Up next, Alec Lazley from thehoosier.com as we continue to roll on from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios right after this.
The ISC Sports Network is your home for sports content across the Hoosier State. Find us live on TV and streaming or archived on our website and our app. The ISC is your one-stop shop for the content you want to see, including high school sports, college sports, and other great events throughout the year. Subscribe to our streaming service and get access to it all. ISC. Local lives here.
Know a team or group needing a fundraiser? Boost Fundraising raises more money faster and offers the most unique and user-friendly online fundraiser in the nation. Your team receives personalized fundraising pages for each team member. Free team-branded promo gifts shipped to each donor. Boost Fundraising does it all. Sports teams, marching bands, charity causes, and community groups. Go to boostfundraising.com and be sure to enter the promo code COYLE, that's COYLE, to receive a discounted fundraiser. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. When it comes to apparel and promotions, Freethink has you covered, literally, whether it's 24 or 200 shirts for sports leagues, businesses, or groups. Freethink Apparel and Promotions can also create your very own merchandising store. Freethink Apparel and Promotions did it for Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and they can do it for you. Whether it's screen printing, embroidery, digital printing, promotional products, vehicle wraps, or anything else under the promotional line. See what Freethink Apparel and Promotions can do for you at freethinkapparel.com.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this, that's so Friday. But Alec Lazley from thehoosier.com joined us, so that makes it a lot better already. How are you doing, brother?
Doing well. How are you doing?
If I was any better, I would be Alec Lazley.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
But I'm not. I'm here talking to you.
Just playing with some toys that we have been messing with. Man, a lot has been going on for IU, both on the football and basketball side of things. Football these are just been nice additions that they need, additions that they're looking for to strategic. They've been strategic additions with the needs on defense being specific for Brian Haynes on the defensive line. And he has added a couple of pieces there this week that look to be just kind of plug and play, with the former teammate of CJ West coming in from Kent State, and then adding the Maryland linebacker who was actually going to play down, which that has to be exciting for Brian Haynes to have a guy that has that kind of athletic ability now going to be down on the line. Maybe that gives Indiana a much more rushing presence, ability to get to the quarterback. And I talk all the time about the anchor Indiana has right up the middle there with Mikael Kamara, an All-American on the line. And then you've got Eden Fisher at linebacker and D'Angelo Pons in the backfield. And they've got a great defensive backfield overall. Man, Indiana football is this upcoming season has to be the greatest position Indiana football has ever been in the history of its program, in my estimation. We saw what they did last year. We know what they lost, but we know what they've added. Personally, I think that the team itself is going to be better overall this year. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have a better record because the schedule is a little more difficult with those 3 tough road games. But I still think that they can wind up being 10-2 and making a return trip to the college football playoffs. Offensively, they've added some great pieces as well. In the backfield, Roman Hemby, Lee Beebe from UAB. Nothing bigger than Fernando Mendoza, who is probably, there's no drop-off. And as a matter of fact, I think it's going to bring a little something because he has some mobility, whether that's just keeping plays alive or turning nothing into something. Not as a knock on Curtis Rourke. Hell, he was hurt. He was a man's man playing the way he did last year. But I still think that overall, this team is going to be better at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. I think it was last week, right? The probably more consistent playmakers and the pop that they have on both sides of the ball. But yeah, getting Kellen Wyatt, the Maryland transfer, I think was a pretty underrated signing this week. And then Daly as well, obviously from Kent State, the CJ West teammate that you were mentioning before at the top there. So those are two tremendous additions that I think are going to go a bit underrated in the portal cycle, right? I mean, Indiana's now done a phenomenal job just in one season with creating a lot of momentum on defensive line transfers and defensive line just production. And you obviously see what they did with CJ West. You see what they obviously have done over the past couple of years with this staff with Kamara, obviously James Carpenter, phenomenal defensive lineman as well. And then you throw in, what they potentially could do with Stephen Daly and then Kellen Wyatt, two, like I said, pretty underrated pass rushers. And that was one aspect that this defense was missing going into the spring. And one aspect that this defense really needed to improve on was adding one or two pieces along the defensive line. Those two combined for 7 sacks last year. Kellen Wyatt, a very versatile edge rusher who's going to be playing again more on the outside for Indiana and more in that edge position. But had, I think it was 7 tackles for loss last year and a really big disruptor when it comes to getting downhill and attacking the backfield. And you just didn't have that presence, again, outside of Mikel Kamara. You didn't really have that presence from this group going into the summer. And so what they were able to do this past week was, I think, a very, very positive step in the right direction. Still need to shore up a few things probably with the addition of maybe a linebacker or two just for some depth purposes. But they've done a phenomenal job up to this point. And then I think you turn to the offensive side and you try to get one more pass catcher, whether that be a tight end or some sort of slot wide receiver. That's probably the only other position that you really look at and say, we really need to cross off something on our to-do list here for the Indiana staff. But outside of that, I mean, they had obviously the injury to Tyler Morris. They have some kind of nagging injuries to a lot of guys, but once again, their core pieces, they got out of spring relatively healthy. Obviously last year they were healthy throughout the majority, if not the entire season. But that's going to be the crucial part now going into the summer, especially if they don't pick up one or two more pieces in those core positions. They really need to make sure they make it into the fall extremely healthy because, again, at that pass catching position, I just don't think you can rely on EJ Williams to be a consistent threat just with all the injury issues that he's had over the past 2 years. So all in all, I mean, I think the Indiana staff has to be excited about where they're at. I think this team is probably going to be a little bit ahead of where they were to begin last year, and especially on the defensive side, which is a scary thought probably for a lot of opposing teams because of how dominant they were for the majority of the 2024 year. But I think this offense is going to put on even more of a show, and I think you're going to see these running backs, all three of them, Kalen Black, BB, and then Roman Hemby, as guys who are very consistent in the pass catching game, which is going to open up a lot more for this offense, year 2 under Mike Shanahan here in Bloomington.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing because the defense had specific needs, and they have basically kind of filled those needs with the types of players that were in them. And a year ago, with all of the doubts that people had, so I don't know if these guys, I don't know that Aiden Fisher can play in the Big Ten. Yeah, no, you're right, he couldn't. He's an All-American. Mikel Kamara, the same thing. Yeah, all these guys. That it's so funny. I mean, it's the same with basketball right now. You see all these guys coming in from Elon and all these other teams, and I'm sure people are thinking, "Wow, dude, you got to get over that. You have to forget all of that stuff." But Indiana is, like you said, they've added those pieces, and now there's yet another piece that might fall today. Indiana looking for a Savage. Jacob Savage out of Union, Kentucky, a linebacker. He's going to announce his commitment today. And Steve Wiltfong, On3's Vice President of Recruiting and Transfer Portal, likes where Indiana sits in this recruitment.
Yeah, announcing at 2:45 later on this afternoon. So it's looks like it's come down to Indiana, Michigan State, Purdue, Louisville have kind of been the top four there for the last couple of months. But Indiana has definitely done a phenomenal job, especially over the last kind of month and a half. He's been on campus numerous times. Was back there earlier this month as well. Coming off the heels of getting Rodney White defensive line commitment in the 2026 class. Obviously, they got Henry Ollinger last week, who's going to be playing at the linebacker position, the four-star running back who is going to make that transition to the linebacking room. So if you're able to add Jacob Savage to that, right, that's a pretty good start to your core defensively. And it's interesting. I was talking to a couple people who were a little bit not concerned, but a little bit taken back at potentially the slow start in the 2026 class for Indiana. But not to say that this is what's going to be the norm for Indiana moving forward, but I think because of all the success they've had now just in one season, and with the assumption, right, that they'll have success with a lot of individual players this year as well, I think you're going to see a lot more of those top and underrated mid-major players and even high major players coming to Indiana to really bridge that gap, and may only have 1 year of eligibility. But I think Indiana is going to become a really big recruiting ground for those transfers who can really step in and produce right away. And so I don't know that there's going to be a huge need for a lot of they may be redshirt freshmen or even true sophomores, whatever the case may be, to come in and produce in year 1.5, year 2. I think you're going to see a lot of much more of an older group of guys consistently for Indiana. But you're also going to see probably those core group of players who end up turning into potentially all Big Ten type players who wait their turn and are now watching behind guys who have been in the system a couple of years and have really good high level experience at the college level. I think it's going to be more of that kind of rotation when it comes to a recruiting aspect, where the portal is probably going to be 90% of this roster, just because of the success that it's had, especially after you get out of this year, right, and you lose some of those key pieces of now Aiden Fisher, Mikel Kamara are going to be gone. You don't have that core group of James Madison guys anymore, but you still have a good core group of players who have now wanting to even come back to Indiana after transferring out. So that the culture is already going to be set. And I think what both coaches are doing here, Curt Cignetti and Darian DeVries, it's all about culture and it's all about fit. And they're not, they're targeting the best players, right? They're not, settling for not going after them, even if they don't land them, but they're also making sure that they check off, every single box that they need. And they're not really compromising anything in landing those players, because they want to make sure that they, check off every single box when it comes to culture and identity and fit before, landing a player like that.
Yeah. And again, I just say, look at last year. There were so many questions about what Curt Cignetti was putting together. And you want to talk about the answer being an iron fist. That's exactly what it was. And they're continuing to go back to the same well and do the same things because it worked, and it worked very, very well. It also allowed Indiana to hold on to so many of these guys. You didn't see very many IU guys hit the portal. Burris, one of the few valuable members this past season. You saw Kalel Benson come back from the portal, which is huge. But also you mentioned, those JMU guys, they're not having to instill this system now. I mean, the new guys, it's obviously new for them, but the core, it's already there. You're just picking up where you left off, and they left off in a really, really good place. Going to Pro Day this year and watching Fernando Mendoza throw the ball, that dude looks like he is in lockstep right now. He can throw it deep. He's got mobility. He has got a cannon on him. Those little 20-yard passes, if you're a receiver, you better be ready, and you better catch it with your hands. Otherwise, it's going to leave a mark on you. And man, they just look like they're doing all of the right things ahead of this season.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we heard, I believe it was Carter Smith talk about it earlier this spring. Talk really about how they need to make sure that they keep the standard high and the level of expectations high. And he said it was interesting that he talked about some of the newcomers that came in that saw the success last year and just kind of automatically assumed that it would be that case this year as well, and kind of came in with a little bit too much confidence or cockiness. So I think even having, that type of player-led leadership from a group that, again, has not seen success and quite some time, especially from the Indiana perspective, right? But you have that core group of guys from JMU who have seen success year in and year out in the Curt Cignetti system, and they know what to expect, and they know how to build on that success and make it very sustainable. I think that's the very important part. But now you have a couple guys, right, who after this season, when you do lose a good core group of those JMU guys, probably the last bit of what came over from last year, you now have a very still good core group of Indiana-born players here from the system that came in with Cignetti that didn't know him from JMU, that now know what the identity needs to be, what the standard needs to be, and what the culture is to be able to obviously, be that bridge from the group of guys who did overlap with the JMU players and now the newcomers over the next year or so who are not going to have any of that overlap with that JMU culture. So it's going to be very, very critical for guys like Carter Smith and some of the other ones who, have the ability to play with the JMU players, and then obviously moving forward without them to really be that bridge and that gap from kind of the first bit of culture setting experiences in Bloomington to what's going to be in the next, year and 2 years when most of those JMU guys are gone.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier about Jacob Savage, and I don't know if it's Savage or Savage, like the cologne. I'm going to go with Savage. If you're a football player and it's spelled that way, you got to be a Savage, baby. But he's from Union, Kentucky, and just like in basketball, not a lot of recruiting from the state of Kentucky, which is odd, ironic. I don't think there's any true reason for that, but it's a 95% prediction to Indiana on him. So Brian Haynes has done an outstanding job getting the kinds of guys that he wants, and he knows what he wants.
Yeah, I mean, between Brian Haynes, between Curt Cignetti, again, they have a great eye for talent. They know, specifically what fits from a personnel standpoint. And so it's never been one about, stars or potential. He talked about this. I think both of them did, but specifically Curt Cignetti did when kind of the first couple months on the job last year, when a lot of people, I don't want to say were concerned, but they had doubts about whether these, 0-star, 1-star, 2-star recruits could, come from JMU or come from the mid-major level and produce right away. And, his mantra was, production over potential, right? And that's all that he looks for. He can mold people into, producing at this level. But if you've never produced before, then he doesn't think that you're the right fit, right? He wants to go after guys who have put up big numbers, who have been successful, who have shown that they have an ability to either rush the quarterback or get out in open space and make plays, or be able to, match up one-on-one on the outside with a star wideout. A lot of these big 5-star, 4-star players who enter the transfer portal year in and year out are guys who, again, have that P word, that potential, but never really live up to it. And that's the biggest thing with this staff is they don't get locked into, the big sexy names that may be out there on the open market. They look for those guys who have produced, who have shown the ability to do exactly what they want, and who are guys who can come in and produce right away. And that's the biggest thing. No matter what position you're at, they're going to look for that production, and they're going to go with production, 10 times out of 10 before they look at a guy with potential and say, hey, we need you to come in and produce right away, because they just haven't done that up to that level yet.
Yeah, they certainly have, and we'll see how that commitment turns out today, and if things continue to go Indiana's way. Alec Lazley from the Hoosier.com with us right now. And before I forget, you guys still have a great special going on there. And if you're not a subscriber to the Hoosier.com, you're missing out on big time content every day, as there are so many stories coming out, and the Hoosier.com is on top of it, if not breaking many of these. What's the special you guys got going there, Alec?
Yeah, still just $1 for the first month, and then 50% off the rest of the year, the rest of your first year. So depending when you sign up, right, that's 12 months of an extra 50% off with all the content from the national perspective all the way down to the nitty gritty aspects of Indiana football and basketball. So definitely make sure to take advantage of that.
We've got lots more coming up. When we return, we're going to talk some hoops with Alec Lazley from the Hoosier.com. Stay with us. Lots more coming up on the other side.
Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue, and you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth Sour Mash Bourbons, Sweet Mash, and Hard Road Ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular Toasted Coconut Rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday. And that means it's the end of the week, baby. You made it. Alec Lazley from the Hoosier.com is with us, and it has been quite the week for Darian DeVries and the Indiana basketball staff, as they have added more pieces to that roster. They're getting deeper and deeper into it. We're getting a very good indication of what this team is going to look like. There's still a few more additions to add, but I would imagine that guards are not going to be the priority, and at least one, if not two, more what we would consider bigs, but maybe not the traditional bigs that we would think of. Some guys that are probably more mobile. I've said it many times. You're not going to see an Umar Ballo on this team. No one that has a 4-foot tether to the rim will be playing out there. They're going to have to be mobile, whether it's for themselves or to drag their defender out away from the paint and keep those spacing lanes open. And so, but Indiana's getting deeper and deeper into what Darian DeVries appears to want for his first season, Alec.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the two additions yesterday, right? Nick Dorn and then Sam Alexis. Nick Dorn had kind of come out of the blue over the last, probably 3 or 4 days. When he entered the portal, everyone kind of had the expectation that he was going to end up at North Carolina. Originally from there, a legacy there, dad and brother both attended. His brother recently played for the football team there. So there was a lot of expectation that that's where he was going to end up. And quite honestly, he fits what the Carolina roster needed. So once he didn't commit after that kind of first week of being in the portal, there was a lot of expectation that, okay, maybe he ends up somewhere else. But really didn't have a lot going on. Was not kind of in that 1 or 2A group of transfer portal additions to kind of the open market. Visited Maryland earlier this week. There was some reports that Pitt was potentially trying to get involved as well, and potentially Gonzaga. Indiana brought him in, and obviously, the rest is history there. He committed shortly after the visit wrapped up. But this is an interesting addition for Indiana. There was always the expectation that Indiana would go out and get one more perimeter player. They needed one more to kind of solidify that group. And they needed one more with size, right? I mean, the ability to land a 6'7" shooter who can play both the 2, the 3, and he can theoretically go very, very small ball 4 because he's definitely more of a physical type of player. But he's known for his shooting, and that's what he does. Almost every single possession when he's out there. He's a career 35% shooter from 3, but extremely high volume. Made 3 threes a game last year. Made 2 threes a game his freshman year. Took 8 threes a game last year alone. So he's going to be a guy who can spot up, can create a little bit off of the dribble, but he's going to be locked in on the 3-point line, and he's a very efficient shooter when it comes to that. So you kind of check off that last box as a shooter, and now you look at what Indiana's been able to really bring in from a shooting perspective, right? Obviously, you have Nick Dorn now. You have Lamar Wilkerson, who shot 44.5% from 3, made almost, I think it was 3.4 threes a game last year. Tucker DeVries, 47%, obviously in limited action last year. But the fact that you add Lamar Wilkerson and Tucker DeVries, who combined for 7.7 threes a game last year, that is 1.2 more than the entire Indiana roster made as a whole last year. So just with those 2 additions, you open up the entire offense. Jason Drake, over a 3 a game, almost 40%. And then Josiah Miles, who made 16 more threes than Luke Goody did, is now your 4th, 5th best shooter. And he's still shooting 34%. Reed Bailey, add that in. Obviously a lower volume shooter, but has the ability to step out at 41%. So you're starting to now look at this roster with 6 legitimate shooters who are going to shoot anywhere from 33.5 to probably 41%. And those aren't guys who are just taking 1 or 2 threes a game. Those are guys who are going to really open things up for Indiana offensively. And when you look at what the addition of Sam Alexis brings now, that's a guy who didn't visit. That was done before he visited. We're told that a visit is in the works over the next week. He should be expected to be on campus, but no official dates for that yet. But a 6'8", 6'9", versatile, physical, high motor forward, a guy who kind of got buried a little bit in the depth chart there for Florida towards the end of the season, just because of all the talent and production they got from a lot of those bigs. But a guy who had a very successful time when he was on the floor, was pretty efficient. When you look at his overall numbers, his per 40-minute breakdown was about 16, 12, and 2.5 blocks a game, and had a double-double last year, had 4 games with 10-plus points. So when he was on the floor, he was pretty efficient. He's not going to be a guy who's going to actively seek out his offense, but is exactly what Indiana needs from a fit perspective. And again, that's we continue to go back to how this roster fits together. He's a guy who's going to rebound the ball, guy who's going to be a phenomenal offensive rebounder. And when you're shooting a lot of threes and shooting a lot of outside shots, you need very efficient and effective offensive rebounders, and that's what he does. Just one stat for that. I mean, his offensive rebound rate last year was 14.5%. And
all that.
And people may not know specifically how that relates to some of the other bigs that Indiana's had. For reference, Chase Jackson Davis, his best year was his freshman year, rebounding the ball offensively at 11.8%. His senior year was just over 10%. Clell Ware was never over 8% in his 2 seasons. And then Omar Ballo was right around 12% last year. So when you look at what he can bring from an efficiency standpoint and an effectiveness standpoint, and whatever minutes those may be, that's the kind of production that you're going to be able to get. He was up to 26% 2 years ago from an offensive rebound rate when he was at Chattanooga, when he averaged basically a double-double before he transferred in to Florida. So this is a guy who's going to be able to play the 4 and the 5. I think you're going to see him a lot more at the 5, though, as that versatile rim protector and a guy who can also catch a lot of lobs, finish around the rim, and again, be that effective offensive rebounder that you need that was really lacking, because Reed Bailey is not a guy who's going to play major minutes at the 5. He can be that guy for some spot minutes, but now you're starting to see this front court rotation come together. Obviously still need to add, I would assume they probably add at least one more, if not 2. And so you start to look at who that could be, right? It's probably going to be a heavy dose of Federico in the discussion.
I want so badly for it to be him, just so I can hear Don Fisher, Federico.
Yeah. And,
Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a great name. Baba Miller from Florida Atlantic has been we've confirmed. Yeah, we've confirmed contact there. But I think the name out of those two, you're definitely looking at Federico, a guy who again is with talking to a few Texas Tech and Pitt reporters and insiders over the last week or so. Phenomenal rim protector and phenomenal in the lob game. And when you have 2 terrific facilitators in Tate and Connerway and Connor Enright who can get downhill and draw extra defenders, that's the type of skill set that you need. And there's no wonder that Indiana is deeply involved there. If you're looking at a high school kid, Leo Curtis, the name that comes to mind, 7-foot center, who decommitted from Arizona State, had Arizona State, Indiana, and West Virginia in his final 3. Really loved a lot of what Indiana had to offer from a brand and kind of culture perspective, and had a great relationship with Darian DeVries at West Virginia as well. So that's a name to keep on the radar. I think Indiana is going to go one more portal big, and then maybe they go and potentially snatch up a high schooler for a little bit of that development to kind of round out the rotation. But now you're really sitting at a very good core group of guys where you don't need to reach for anything. You have a solid foundation. Now it's about finding those, maybe 2 more players who really fit in perfectly. And it's going to be, more status quo of what this staff has done over theoretically the last week and a half, where they've landed obviously a large chunk of what this roster consists of right now.
Alec Lazley, the managing editor for thehoosier.com on 3. Go there and subscribe now. It's $1 for the first month, 50% off for the first year. That's only $5 a month, people. You're missing out, I'm telling you, because there's way more coverage than what we're talking about there. And that's where you're going to get the information first, as they also working with Joe Tipton and all those guys to break all these great stories. Lots of good stuff, Alec. We appreciate you, brother. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We didn't get to talk about the Thunder, their 26-point comeback last night. 29. Oh, I thought it was 29. Yeah. Then I thought I read 26, but that was mind-boggling. And forget it. The Memphis is done. You're gone. Zach Edey had the dumbest foul I've ever seen in the history of basketball, even though I need to get out. But he's on a jump ball, and he should have gotten a flagrant for that dang old thing. But anyway, little 500 weekend. If you're running around Bloomington, park the car, walk. Appreciate you, my friend, as always.
Appreciate it, Jim. Have a good one.
You betcha. And can I thank each and every one of you? Big thanks to everybody. Todd Liry, Zach Osterman, of course, Alec Lazley for joining us. Most importantly, each and every one of you. Without you, we have no reason to be here. We are grateful for it. We're back on Monday, but anything happening over the weekend, we'll be updating you. And, of course, you can go to thehoosier.com as they will constantly do that. Have yourselves a great one. Until Monday, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.